The great irony of being her grandson is I'm actually here to see yours. So but as a young boy, I would visit her in a beautiful home in California, and my grandma Ruth in a public housing apartment building in St. Paul. And that disparity really bothered me as a young kid, as you can imagine. And frankly, at age 49 and a father of two myself, it bothers me even more now because those disparities have not narrowed over the past 40, 50 years. They've expanded. And it very much illuminates my run for Congress because it's a responsibility of people who've worked hard or been afforded blessings and opportunity and succeeded to ensure that we do as much as we can for those that have. There's a very fine line between advantage and disadvantage, and I've lived on both sides. And when I was a little boy, we moved to Edina. I went to Edina Highland School in the very beginning. And I was raised in a household that demanded hard work of me, taught me to judge people by the content of their character, not by the color of their skin, and taught me to measure success not by how much we collect, rather by how much we share. And those are our core principles. And my first job, as I said today at the debate, was at Ryan's in downtown Minneapolis. Any Ryan's chicken wings fans in here? Yeah, I'm sure I bust your dishes at some point. In fact, every Sunday morning, I would get to work at about 8 a.m. and Paul Ryan would put me up on a ladder and hand me a white towel and have me clean every one of those hundreds of picture frames that surround the walls at Ryan's. And it was the first time I thought about public policy because I thought to myself, if every 14-year-old in the country had this job, there would be no more teenage smoking. because when I removed on that white towel every Sunday morning, back when you could smoke in restaurants and bars, would have astounded you. And next year I opened a mobile car wash service, which, as I said, is probably something I'll go back to if this run doesn't work out so well for Congress. And because I love to explore, I worked at Dane Bosworth for a summer. I worked in an architectural firm. Eventually I took an internship at Senator Patrick Leahy's office, the senator from Vermont. This is back in 1988. And of course, he's still a senator. And perpetual incumbency is something that's on my mind these days, as you can probably imagine. I went to school at Brown University in Providence, Rhode Island. And afterwards, I came back home because I love it here. And when I came home, I went to my father and I said, I'm ready to work in our family business. And he said, no, you're not. He said, no, you got to make your mistakes elsewhere. So I did. I made a lot of mistakes elsewhere. I found a job at a startup business in Edina called In Motion. We made bicycle apparel that had a little liquid-filled bladder sewn into the shorts, so it made your bicycle ride a little bit more comfortable. Unfortunately, the bladders had a tendency to burst at the very bad time. So I learned a lot about quality control at a young age. A couple years later, I went back to my dad and I said, I think I'm ready to work at the business. And he said, if you're ready to make half as much and work twice as hard, we've got a place for you. And I said, bring it on. And I worked in our warehouse, picking orders, then in our production department. If any of you may have had a bottle of Phillips scotch that tasted like peppermint schnapps, I apologize. And my favorite job at Phillips was driving around all 5 states in the upper Midwest and selling our products. I went through every small town, and it really prepared me for this pursuit because I listened to people. Some of the most wonderful stories and wonderful people you've ever met, and a really remarkable experience. I went to business school on the weekends. I started developing our international sales and business at Phillips, and eventually worked my way up the ladder and ran the business. And as many of you know, the businesses that I've built and managed, I believe they're a means to an end. And the end is not making as much money as possible. Rather, it's taking as good a care of the people and communities that made that success possible. That is my personal mandate, and that's exactly what we do. In fact, to this very day, I keep on my desk a copy of our 1942 Employee Profit Sharing Program plan because it's a reminder of what comes first in the businesses that I ever want to be a part of. And then we sold Phillips. My family and I made an investment in a little ice cream business called Talenti. Any Talenti fans? Yeah. Favorite flavors? Mango, good. Just so you know that the pint is our single serve size. I kid you not. We do a lot of research, and we often hear, especially from women who do a lot of the grocery buying still, they would say, I buy a pint or two of Talenti and I put it in a paper bag and put it in the back of my freezer. And for the rest of my family, I buy a gallon of Pimm's. And when they go to to sleep at night and I watch my TV shows and read my book, I go in the back and give my fine. That's how that works. When we sold Talenti, once again, we enriched all of those that worked and helped make that possible by sharing success. And more recently, I opened a couple coffee shops with a business partner called Pennies. And Pennies, we do the same thing. We put our principles into play. We pay everybody a $15 minimum wage, plus tips, so most people earn over $20. Not because we have to, and not because it's easy, because it's not. It's hard. But it's the right thing to do. And I believe in this country, anybody who works hard should be afforded a livable wage. Nobody should live in poverty. It should be a place. But turning up the clock to November of 2016, I watched that entire race, the presidential race, with great dismay. I was sad that our country had devolved to the point that it had. The outcome of the election clearly was troublesome to me. And I watched through the lens of my daughters, who at that time were 18 and 16. I watched their fear, and I watched their anxiety, and I watched their tears. And the next morning at the breakfast table, I promised them that I was going to do something. And that doing something has turned into this very run for Congress, because I didn't think I had that luxury anymore of watching and complaining from the sidelines. It was time to participate. And it is the best decision I've ever made in my life. I have never been more hopeful, more optimistic, more inspired, more energized, and more excited to bring change, because it's coming on November 6th, my friends. It is coming. I made that promise to my daughters at that breakfast table, and then as a parent, as many of you in this room know that feeling, you make a promise, you figure out how you're going to fulfill it. And I started turning my attention to Eric Paulson. And I discovered a man who talks like Jim Ramstad, but votes like Michelle Obama. A man whose votes don't seem to match his quotes. And as you all know, I say all the time that I believe our Constitution anticipated a president like Donald Trump. But it did not anticipate a Congress filled with so many who are bought and sold and who lack courage. And Eric Paulson, as you saw today in the debate, won't even acknowledge the truth. He's the sixth biggest taker of special interest money in the entire U.S. Congress. And he thinks standing up to Donald Trump is doing a tweet every once in a while. That's not what courage looks like, and that's not what speaking truth to power looks like, and that's not what representation looks like. But it's when he took the vote on the AHCA, which would have stripped millions of Americans from their health insurance plans, that I decided I'm going to take him on. And as I said before, it is the best thing I've ever done in my life. And here we are, ahead in the polls, had our first debate today, and I'm feeling awfully optimistic about November 6th. And I'll tell you, the first thing I did when I declared my candidacy, I bought my government repair truck, which is parked up front. I hope you've all seen it. Some of you say it has to be a little bit bigger, which is a fair contention. But I bought it because I wanted to do something that would inspire people to come and talk. And that's why you don't see any political party on the side. It just says the government repair truck. And I serve coffee out of the service window or lemonade. And people come and say hi. And they share their stories. They share their dreams, their concerns, their challenges. Some of those beautiful stories you've ever heard, and some of the most heart-wrenching stories you've ever heard. But that's the core responsibility of representation, is to listen. And in this day and age, it's awfully difficult to get people to come out and talk. But my great epiphany so far is that when you afford that opportunity for people to talk and have a conversation, you'll learn that there's very little that divides us. And that's why I believe it is time, and most people agree, it's time that our country makes the moral decision to ensure that every American has health care when they need it, no matter your age, your income, your geography, or your condition. We're the only developed nation. The United States of America is the only developed nation in the entire world that chooses not to ensure that people have coverage. And we already spend twice as much as any country in the world, any developed country, and our outcomes are mid-pack. I make the argument that the money's in the system. We can do a lot better, and we're going to do better. I also believe that every American child shouldn't just receive a good education. They should be receiving a world-class public education, and not just some children, but every child in this country. And the disparities between districts, both in our own district and beyond, are in some cases very, very disturbing to me. And I want to make sure that teachers have the support they need. I want to develop a national retiree program that would take advantage of the wonderful, wonderful people in this country that have time on their hands, great life experience, to go into classrooms, help teachers, support them, and give kids the chance to be supported too. High fives and hugs, learn how to read, learn how to do math, share your life experience, and equally importantly, get kids out of the classroom. Because when you inspire a young person that then makes that a dream and someone believes in them, everything changes. And I think one of the ways to close the achievement gap is to close the exposure gap and getting kids into factories and into hospitals and into advertising agencies and law firms and see what's possible. And that doesn't cost any more money. I believe in the environment. You know, especially young people come to me and they say, you know, everything you talk about is important, but if we don't ensure we have clean air and clean water, and if we don't address climate change, it doesn't matter. And that's why I say we didn't leave the Stone Age because we ran out of crops. We left the Stone Age because we found better ways to do things. And we know what those things are. You know, wind is now the least expensive form of energy. Except energy is decommissioning coal plants in favor of wind and solar because it's actually economically more viable. But we have a president in the White House who wants to bring us back to coal. And we might as well reopen typewriter repair shops. Because that's not the future. And production tax credits are what provided the incentives for wind and solar to become affordable and actually the most affordable. We have to do the same. We have to stop the big subsidies for fossil fuels and start migrating those into what is the next generation, which is renewable energy. We can do it. Make sure that we have clean air and clean water. And most of all, we should be leading. We should be leading. We should rejoin the Paris Climate Accord and not be the only country in the world that chooses to exit it. Health and economic security and reproductive rights, and finally ratifying the Equal Rights Amendment. How about that? One state away. And gun violence prevention. Everybody I talk to, Republicans, Democrats, independents, mothers and fathers and children and teachers, everybody wants to see something done, and we have a Congress that has done nothing in 20 years to ensure that our streets and our schools, our children, and all of us are safer. And we can achieve that. And I ask all of you, when you talk about it, to talk about the outcome, which is gun violence prevention. When you talk about gun control, that's the way to end the conversation. Nobody wants to be controlled. What we all agree on is gun violence prevention. And I've got a thoughtful plan to achieve that. And I'll tell you, after Parkland, something changed in this country. And young people decided if older people, adults, aren't going to do anything for us, we're going to do it ourselves. And I say if Congress isn't ready to make changes to save lives, then I'm going to support young people to change Congress. And that's what we're doing under Beverly. Last but not least, no matter what your number one issue is, and they are all important, I ask that campaign finance reform and money in politics become your number two. Because nothing important to any of us here, to anybody in our community, our state, and our country, will ever get accomplished, in my estimation, until we start reducing the influence of affluence in our politics. Because the money that is flowing into our campaigns is absurd. The relentless pursuit of money is grave. There are quid pro quos attached to it. And it's not just the corruption that results from the money, it's the time. Candidates and members of Congress spend about half of their time raising money from wealthy people, from wealthy institutions, from federal lobbyists, from the same people that write legislation and then come in your office and want you to vote on it. And it's my job, I feel, to expose the truth and to elevate this issue and ask all of you to join me. It's an invitation to join me in becoming advocates for what I think is the single biggest threat to this country's future if we don't do something about it. And that's why I'm the only candidate in the entire country that refuses all PAC money, all special interest money, all money from federal lobbyists, and all money from members of Congress. Because members of Congress use money to influence who votes too. And I would be the most independent member of the entire 435-member Congress. Because I want to do this differently. This is the district that can set the tone for the entire country. But we have to ask our friends and neighbors to join the cause. And if we do so, we will leave a legacy that future generations will celebrate for generations to come. So that's a little about what we've discovered. That's what I stand for. The joyful element is meeting with people like you and listening and learning, and I've got a lot more of that to do. But I want to let you know a couple of things about the race. We're ahead of the polls. I've challenged you at Polson, as I did a number of times today, to sign the Minnesota Way Pledge, which would get rid of all the PAC money and all the special interest money, all the self-funding, and all of the outside spending. And then one more little thing. Simply have us show up in public 2 times per month in a public forum like this where people can ask questions of both of us without intimidating. And he won't sign it. I don't know why, but that doesn't matter, because at the end of the day, what matters is votes, and what matters is listening to people, and what matters is representation. And that's exactly what I intend to do. So if you like what you hear, and you're inspired, and you want to join this extraordinary family, which is getting bigger by the day, no matter what talent you have, I promise you, we could use it. That means phone banks, that means door knocks, that means planting signs in people's yards, that means helping us with policy, that means talking to friends and neighbors. And I guarantee you one thing, on November 6th, it may be the most meaningful evenings of your entire lives, because we will not be measured by what happened in 2016, but we will be measured by what happens this November 6th. And the future of our country depends on it. And I'm grateful to depend on all of you. I'm grateful that you take the time to show up today, because we need more people participating. So I thank you, I extend my gratitude, and most of all, change is coming, and everyone is invited. That is our motto, and it's heartfelt, and I'd love to turn it over to you now for any questions you might have. Just so everybody heard the question was about Keith Ellison, and would I have the courage to ask him to step aside if the allegations are proven true? And the answer is absolutely. And as I said today in the debate, it's the same thing that I've said before, which is any allegation of misconduct, any allegation of abuse, I take very, very seriously, no matter where it comes from. And it takes a lot of, speaking of courage, it takes a lot of courage for anybody to come forward with a charge like that, because it changes one's life, and most of the times not for the better. And I really recognize that. And as I've said, if these allegations prove true, it is absolutely disqualifying for anybody who wants to serve the public. That's true. And yes, I would have the courage to call him and tell him I also want to point out the fact that we are so blessed to live in a country that affords due process to everybody. Whether it be Paul Manafort, Michael Cohen, the President of the United States, anybody. And I think it's an important distinction to make, that we have got to let the facts be presented and then make decisions, and then the judgment day comes. That's how I look at it. You may have heard Eric Paulson yesterday on WCCO was interviewed. He and I said exactly the same thing, which is we need more information.
What I worry about is Al Franken didn't get due process.
And Al Franken didn't get due process.
Even Keith Ellison due process, which is what I believe.
Yeah.
But I just feel like we're not doing the same thing for both.
I agree. That's absolutely true. I think due process should be afforded any Republican, any Democrat, anybody, as it's afforded to anybody in this room, should there be an allegation. And I take it really, really seriously, and I'm very concerned. Yes.
Your message tonight makes complete sense. The problem I'm having is the national level Democratic Party seems all over the place. They seem to be waffling, waving, whatever. And so locally, maybe we can start a whole new thing here. But what's going to, obviously, Pelosi and Chuck Schumer are, I'm an old guy, I'm 74. They're probably just about as old as I am. So I'm not against old guys.
They're older.
At some point, we've got to have people like you that are younger, that have these ideas and energy. So I have 2 questions. Number one, how can you know, or how can Democratic bigger picture across the country? How can that message be better honed, more crisp, more succinct? And second, what are we going to do with some of the leadership positions that are going to be wonderful campaign targets for the Republicans?
Sure. So the question is more of a contention that I agree with, that the Democratic Party has a dearth of leadership and a dearth of message and direction. And I agree. It's another reason I'm running for Congress. I'm really disappointed in leadership on both sides of the aisle, as I said in the debate today. I think it's time for new leadership, new energy, and new ideas on both sides of the aisle. And by the way, that's why I won't take money from members of Congress, because when it comes time to voting for leadership positions, those that fund other campaigns remind the beneficiaries of that money when it comes time to vote. I would be the only member of Congress that doesn't take that money, so I can make a principled decision who would serve as Speaker of the House the best. And that's the responsibility of serving in Congress. I'm a Democrat because I believe in truth, and I believe in justice, and I believe in opportunity for all. And I'm a Democrat because I believe that Hubert Humphrey was one of my heroes. And it was he that said, the moral test of the government is how it treats those in the dawn of life, in the twilight of life, and in the shadows of life. That's why I'm a Democrat. I want to take care of people. And the Democratic Party needs new leadership. There's no question. I would love to be part of that next generation. And I want to be part of the generation that is inspired by collaboration. And doesn't look at it as either or us and them, rather all of us. And that is what we have to move to, and that's exactly what I've been doing for 25 years. And I want to bring that type of independence to a place that needs a whole lot more of it. And that's the kind of change I'm looking for, and I want to be part of it.
Two-part question. So, if you were somebody who determined that you weren't going to be the only member of Congress that didn't take special interest in money, how do you close that gap between your self-promotion to become your message to become widespread so that you can be elected when you are running against people who are collaborating with people who do take money? And then that second part of the question is term limits, or tell me about term limits. I completely applaud and support your ideas around not taking money, but how do you keep up when you make that moral decision to do that?
Thanks, Greg. So the question is, how do you keep up when other people take gobs of money from special interests or federal lobbyists or other members of Congress, and how do you play the game? And as I agree that we need to have a level playing field in this country. As I said in the debate today, one of my personal missions is to change the system so that it is more accessible to people who want to serve our country or our communities or our states or our cities and towns. And right now, as you surely recognize, a lot of people don't want to do this because it's so unfriendly. The relentless pursuit of the money is frustrating, and there's so much corruption. And that's exactly what I am doing, because I want to change that whole dynamic. That's why this Minnesota Way pledge, even in its simplicity, that is the way that we can actually level the playing field. And I think one way to start doing so is to reduce the amount that campaigns spend. Because right now, we limit how much you can share with a campaign constitutionally. I think this country would be very well served by limiting how much campaigns spend so that candidates and electeds spend more time campaigning and meeting with people and answering questions. It's not that complicated. What's complicated is that we have 435 members of Congress right now that don't seem to mind the current system. So that's why I need you to send me to Washington, and I'm going to be that loud voice that doesn't care about what office he gets or what committee assignment he gets, because I won't be the most popular member in Congress, because I'm going to speak truth, and I'm going to elevate and advocate for what we need to do. And if I succeed in my mission, that means we succeeded in our mission. And we open the doors to wonderful people who want to serve, who can do so without having access to millions of dollars in their own bank account or millions of dollars in financing from interests around this country. It's not that complicated, but we need all of you to start making this important. And to that end, September 7th, mark your calendars, the movie Dark Money premieres in Minneapolis. It is something worth watching. And secondly, there's a Facebook series called The Swamp. And if you want to see how it works inside the Congress, how the money game is played, watch it. It's about 4 10-minute episodes, and it will really, really shock you. And that's how I'd ask that you begin. And also go to opensecrets.org and type in the name Eric Paulson and learn where the money comes from. And then look at the voting record. And you'll understand what's so wrong with our politics, and that's why we have to fix it. And term limits. Perpetual incumbency is a big problem. And I think if we can rectify our campaign finance system, that will actually create a little bit more turnover, which is what we need. 98% of incumbents win, which is what's going to make this race really hard. No matter how we look in the polls, it's a complicated endeavor to unseat a sitting incumbent. And I don't care about what side of the aisle, Democrat, Republican, when people are there for decades, that's not how it's supposed to be. So if we can't adjust our campaign finance system, I believe we should at least investigate term limits, as we have with the President of the United States, 8 years. And I think that's something we should consider, because we need to have at least a little bit more turnover of fresh ideas. But we have to be mindful of the fact that if there's too much turnover, we're actually entrusting governance to staff members rather than electeds, and that's a big deal. So we have to be very mindful of the consequences for everything we do, and I think that does right. Yes?
I'd like to turn over the floor to this young man here.
Oh.
He's had his hand up.
Oh.
No,
Right here. Right there?
No, he went there. Yes.
I see a lot of young men.
Awesome, yeah, thank you. Well, my name's Nick.
Hey, Nick.
I'm gonna be a first-time voter this year.
Hey, right on.
I just wanted to ask you quick about your stance on the environment. We're talking about the environment opening, and we've talked about it in the past. We talked about your carbon tax. We talked about that. We talked about fossil fuels, things like that. Which should be regulated too much. Fossil fuels. So my question is, I was surprised to see that you've been investing between $780,000 and $2 million in different energy companies and major car companies. You've held stocks valued between 65 grand and 150 grand in the Energy Transfer Partners, which are the owners of the Dakota Access Pipeline. It's a pipeline that a lot of protesters, environmental protesters, protested. And you talked about ExxonMobil taking a shot at Representative Paulson about receiving contributions from ExxonMobil, which I do get that. That's sort of like a pledge. But you also have been invested in them. And to be fair, we don't know. We have sources of investments. We don't know which ones to be sold. So my question is basically, what is your response to that? And why have you been invested in these companies if you have a public stance against like rising emissions
So the question is, it was calling attention to the fact that I had some investments that were in industries that policies that I support would actually be detrimental to, meaning that my investments in those businesses would decline if I had investments in those companies, of course. And like I would imagine many of you, I own mutual funds. I have a stockbroker and investment advisors that invest my money. I've been a business person for 25 years. I have not gone through every mutual fund that I had and looked at where all the monies were invested in the hundreds and thousands of companies. But I've done so recently. And I've made the decision to invest in anything that is incongruent with my personal principles, even if my policies that I support would have actually reduced the value of those investments, because I think that's the right thing to do. Should I be so fortunate as to represent all of you in Congress, I'll put all my resources and assets in a blind trust, so there will be no. But what troubles me really deeply, and what is a clear and present issue, is that our current member of Congress takes hundreds of thousands of dollars from these very enterprises, which is why his votes don't match his votes, because he talks like he's a supporter of the environment or a protector of the boundary waters. But the fact of the matter is hundreds of thousands of dollars flow into his campaign coffers from these very entities. And rest assured, there's a connection between the votes and all that cash. I will do things entirely differently. I will not take a dollar. Will never take a dollar from any corporate PAC, from any union PAC, from any PAC whatsoever. And that's how I do business, and we need more people like that in Congress.
World individuals with disabilities right now is under 65 threat of Medicaid cuts. And I wanted to know how you stand on Medicaid expansion. And also where you stand on the people that work in homes and communities, pay $12 an hour. The turnover rate is 45%. So many of these individuals who are on bills are losing progress because they can't get decent staff to take care of them in many cases. Dangerous situations because of that, and I wanted to know how you feel about Medicaid expansion cuts. Medicaid, and also where you stand on, this is a little bit more specialized, but issues related to transportation that people with disabilities so they can achieve their goals and get jobs. We talk about employment for individuals with disabilities. Probably the biggest barrier to employment is disability as much as it is the transportation.
So the question is about my perspective on those with disabilities and access to work and transportation, Medicaid, and taking care of those with disabilities, and how those who care for those with disabilities in many of our communities are paid often $12 an hour, certainly below living wage. And I talk to people, as you all know, throughout our district all the time, who share their stories with me. And I've heard some of the most heart-wrenching stories you can possibly imagine about the challenges of individuals with disabilities trying to address the same thing. In fact, my first job as a volunteer when I was a young teenager was at Courage Center. And it really opened my eyes to not just the challenges that disabilities pose to so many, but the possibilities. And I think it's time for our country to recognize that everybody's got possibilities and potential. And as I said earlier, I'm a Democrat because of the words of Hubert Humphrey. He said it's how we treat those in the shadows of life that we should be measured by. That's why I want policies that give people opportunities. The same opportunities that I hope many of you in this room have been afforded are the same ones I want to afford to everybody. We can't guarantee outcomes, but we can surely do better in guaranteeing opportunities. So I want to see a more compassionate country that ensures that those that cannot fend for themselves are taken care of by all of us. And I want to ensure that those who take care of those who face those challenges are at least afforded a livable wage so they can continue to do so. Our country always finds the resources to build big stadiums. In fact, I drove by yesterday. There's a tent camp in the city of Minneapolis that's in the shadows of U.S. Bank Stadium. And I thought to myself, we find ways to come up with $1 billion for a stadium, or the president wants $25 billion for a wall that will be ineffective. But why don't we find the resources to take care of human beings that simply need to be cared for in a prosperous country such as ours? Those are the guys.
My question is about the pharmaceutical industry, the health insurance industry, things like that. I know that I saw the chart, might not be true, but it was showing how the CEO incomes have gone up so high and regular paid earners and peasants. And I just see a lot of discrepancy, like given it in cities, and these, like the cities that are 68 million or something. And as a healthcare provider, their reimbursement rates to workers have gone down over the past 20 years. So I see it as an unchecked, something's out of control with pharmaceutical insurance industry.
Yeah, so the contention that I agree with is something's out of control in the pharmaceutical industry. I can easily answer why. Because the pharmaceutical industry spends $240 million a year, as they did last year, lobbying members of Congress. And they spend tens of millions of dollars more enriching campaign coffers. And when they do that, people like Eric Paulson, who serves on the Ways and Means Committee, writes a tax bill with their input accrues them billions and billions of dollars of benefits. And of course, the other quid pro quo is that we won't do anything that will hurt your monopoly on pricing in this country. That's why we subsidize the entire world's pharmaceutical price. Our costs have received over $400,000 from just the big pharma companies. And that's the problem. That's the system of legalized corruption that we have got to address. And it's industry by industry. Those who have the dollars and spend the money on the lobbyists and spend the money on the campaigns are the ones that get access to the office and write the legislation and get all that work done. And we are the ones that lose. And that's why I want to represent people, not PACs. And that's why we have to make these systematic adjustments. And CEO pay, it is the multiple between the lowest paid person in U.S. in corporate America and the highest has increased exponentially in the last number of decades. And if we become a country where it's a bunch of haves and have-nots, many of you have been to countries that have that problem, and I don't want that to be ours. My great-grandfather used to say to me, Dean, money is like manure. If you stack it up, it stinks. And if you spread it out, it fertilizes. And there's a truth to it. And that doesn't mean I think government should be in the business of simply redistributing income, but I think we need thoughtful policies that provide incentives for people to share more and to ensure that people who work hard at companies throughout this country are afforded more. This tax bill was written with a promise that the money would flow down through corporations and save money on taxes to the hardworking people that work for the companies. Well, any of you see the headlines in the last week, wages are stagnant. You can't argue with that, it's the truth. But stock buybacks are at an all-time high, the stock market is booming, and that's good for America. But it's not helping people who are working so hard. That's why I'm running for Congress.
First of all, thank you for running.
Thank you.
I guess some of that trying to succeed, I would have voted for a broomstick, but thankfully you're not. I got to meet both you and Muriel Humphrey. I worked for Paul Wellstone, and thank you for running the Democratic wing of the Democratic Party. I want to ask you though, in the political climate that we're in, how do you plan to get attention to the most important issues and not the smoke and mirrors of, oh my goodness, look what number 45 did today. And meanwhile, all the people behind him, Paul Ryan, are quickly dismantling what we care about in our country, but we're focused on those things that really don't matter at the end. How do you plan on focusing the country's attention on the matters?
So thank you. The question is, how do I plan on focusing attention on what really matters in this country? And I would argue that it's actually something that's all of our responsibility. And it begins on November 6th. And we need to flip the House of Representatives. Even George Will, one of the most prominent Republican pundits and writers, has argued that we collectively and Republicans specifically should strongly consider voting for Democrats to flip the House because this country needs a check on the executive branch. It's how this country functions, and it's an imperative. That's the beginning. And then in 2020, we need to flip the White House. There's no question. In the meantime, even if I'm one of 435 voices, I believe I can make a difference. And I believe that there are hundreds running for office around the country like me who were affected by the 2016 election that said I need to participate. And I think that change is coming in November. I think we're going to have a crop of new representatives in the House that is going to be unlike any before. And my hope is that it's on both sides of the aisle. And this country needs a thoughtful Republican Party, and it needs a thoughtful Democratic Party, and it needs people that go there to work together to get things done. And I've watched politicians over the years make promises, only to be breaking them 99% of the time. The one promise I can absolutely make and hold is that I will be relentless in trying to affect the things that are really important for this country, and most importantly, serve the common interests and not special interests. That's my promise.
Hi, welcome to the next part of our world. I am very excited that you're running. Living in Eden Prairie for 34 years has seen, I respected Ramstead because at least he met with people. Didn't always vote the way people wanted him to vote, but he was open and approachable. So it's been like living in a desert, and I welcome you to the desert, and I know things will change.
Thank you.
But I have a couple of things I am concerned about with your candidacy.
Sure.
I taught school here. I'm a retired school teacher.
Thank you.
And I love every minute of it, and I consider it one of the most important things I did with my life. There are 3 women that I really admire in terms of the history of the United States. One of them is Frances Perkins, the history of the Secretary of Labor under Franklin Roosevelt, who developed Social Security, and I think she made changes for our country that have lasted for 80 years, and they were very important. The next is Eleanor Roosevelt, who I think went out because she came from money, because she was part of a power base, made significant differences in people's lives. My father was one of 10. When he was a little boy in the 30s, his father lost his job. And the next week, First National Bank of Chicago wrote my grandparents a letter saying, if you don't make your payment, you and your 10 children will be out on the street. Literally, we have the letter. You'll be out on the street next week. My grandmother, who was a strong Irish person, wrote to Eleanor Roosevelt and said, if you'll just help us, we're good for the money, and when my husband gets a job, we will, make good on it. And Mrs. Roosevelt called the president of the First National Bank of Chicago, and she said, if you don't honor this family's home, I'm going to make you a national example. And that was a time when people with money could be shamed. They cannot be shamed anymore. And so she saved our family. And the First National Bank president called my grandmother and said, okay, come down on Monday, and we'll talk about, even if you just pay $1 a month, you've got to pay something. And then he said, but did you have to write a letter to the wife of the president of the United States? And you know what?
Yes.
She did. She did. She would have done anything. And so this is where I come from. Now, I want to tell you, I'm worried about a comment I heard you make in the debate today, because I listened, and I love 98% of what you said. But this one worried me, because you talked about in the opening about due process. And then for you to get up, and the third person I really admire is Nancy Pelosi. And I'll tell you why. Because I think she's being attacked as a woman. I think she's being attacked because she's effective. Yeah, she's 80 years old. I know how old she is. And I know she plays the kind of hardball politics that you don't ascribe to, that you want to transform. And I respect that. But I don't believe in dissing someone who has really done something for this country. And I hope that as you talk about her in the future in your vote, you will give her due process. Because that disturbed me when you said that today. I think everything else you've had to say, the things that you stand for, are the things that I stand for, the reason I'm a Democrat. But please think about that as you talk about her in the future, because it sounded disrespectful.
And I'll address that. I respect your opinion. My perspective, when I say that I think it's time for both parties to have new leadership on both sides of the aisle, has nothing to do with the things that you just mentioned. It has everything to do with the fact that I think we need new ideas. I think we need some new energy. And I don't think that the Speaker of the House, or even the minority majority leaders, should be elected based on how much money they can raise for the party. They should be elected based on how much they can inspire, and how well they can lead, and how well they can work with others. And I think that equity has been spent. And I think it's time for new representation on both sides of the aisles. This is not a diss on anything else, other than the fact that I think it's time for fresh, for new, for innovation. And I think both parties do it. I respect your perspective, and it's just a matter of opinion. And that's my perspective. And I'm being forthright, and I hear you, and I understand. And I want to be I will say one more thing. There are some extraordinarily impressive female potential leaders in the Democratic Party that are absolutely worthy of consideration for leadership positions. And as I said earlier, since I don't take money from any of them, I can make a principled decision when it comes time for those votes. And I want to see a Speaker of the House, by the way, who speaks for the House, not just for one party or the other. This is supposed to be the Speaker of the United States Congress, the House of Representatives. And I want to find somebody that represents those principles. That's what this country needs now more than ever. And that's why I think we need some change.
You want to ask this yet? I don't think he was sent here as a troll.
I understand, but there are a lot of people, that have questions. Go ahead.
Along those lines, would you then be in support of the House changing rules back to allowing bills to come up to vote versus the present system
Yeah.
where they just get shut down?
Thanks for asking. Yeah, the question is, how do you even get legislation to the floor for votes? Because we don't have regular order anymore. And one of my priorities, should I have the honor of serving you in Congress, is to ensure that regular order returns. I had a wonderful visit with Fritz Mondale not long ago, and he said if you do nothing else, ensure that regular order returns. Some of you have heard on the debate today that I'm a big fan of the bipartisan problem solvers caucus. 24 Republicans, 24 Democrats that are working together right now on thoughtful solutions to the problems that this country faces. But they can't get their work presented to the floor of the House for votes because the leadership in both parties, I think, is standing in their way. And that's why we need change. That's why we need to enhance caucuses that are trying to get good work done and ensure that we return to regular order. Because that is the function of the U.S. House. It's not happening. And it's not happening, I would argue, because of the money in politics. There are too many significant vested interests that have too much they claim to be at risk so that the status quo is preserved and anything that might affect that will not appear on the floor for vote. And we have got to do better. I hear you, and that's exactly why I'm running for Congress. I promise you that. Yes. I'm going to alternate kind of sides of the room. Oh. Thank you for the reminder. I will get to the centrist in a moment.
So my question is regarding immigration. Almost 3 years ago, we adopted 2 wet teenagers, believe it or not, from South America. And as a result, indirect result, we've met every Spanish-speaking kid within 20 miles of where we're sitting. And I've learned a lot as a result of that. For example, one young woman, her mom, when this little girl was a baby, applied for a green card to come to the U.S. from Costa Rica. It took 15 years. So the situation in other countries, what can we do to help them? That's an issue. But people are here illegally because of what's going on in their home country, but also the situation to the ability to become a legal immigrant is pretty much impossible. So your thoughts in that area?
As I said in today's debate, and I've been saying for a year and a half, we need comprehensive immigration reform. And the fact that Congress has done almost nothing for decades now, is really appalling. And as a family of immigrants myself, I'm sure many of you in this room are immigrant families, whether you're first generation or in my case, fifth or sixth generation. That's what America is, if you ask me. We are a nation built on immigrants and immigration, being a place of refuge for those who are being persecuted overseas, and being a land of opportunity. And why the fact that we have a president sitting in the White House who has made that word immigrant and immigration a dirty word in certain circles is really important to me in a setting. And we can and should do better. And to your point, it is awfully difficult right now because of a broken system. I think we need to find a path to citizenship for law-abiding, hard-working people in this country who are not documented now, but want to become citizens. I believe in the notion of redemption. I don't think it should be seamless and simple. I think we should have to do something for citizenship in this country because it is a privilege to be American. And I think that's something we all agree on. That's what I hear from people all the time as I visit with people, and I hear some of the same stories you just shared. So that's my priority. In 2013, there was a bipartisan plan in Congress that Representative Paulson could have advocated for, and it never came to vote. It never happened because he wasn't willing to really go to bat for it. And the fact that he's been there for a decade, been a public servant now for 30 years, nothing has changed, is this culture of non-action that has got to be addressed. And that's why I really want to be a voice of reason and represent the principles and values that made this place so hard. And that's what I want to talk about. It's not easy. It's not easy when we have a president in the White House who is so opposed. And that's why we've got to flip the House and we've got to flip the White House.
Okay, first of all, I want to really support you on your statement that the moral issue to give everyone health care. Also, totally support you again. We need new leadership. Those are fine, we should stand firm. What I want to ask you though is, I know you've said you support buy-in to Medicare people. Can you give us your idea of what that, how that would work financially? Because Medicare is trouble financially.
So the question is the notion of a Medicare buy-in option. I want to make sure that everybody in this country has access to affordable health care whenever they need it, no matter who you are, where you live, what your condition is, what your age is. I believe that's the moral imperative. And that's shared by most of the people I visit with all the time. So some argue for various ways of accomplishing this. What I think is the most pragmatic way to accomplish this is to simply make Medicare an option to buy into for anybody in this country who wants to. You know, I own a small business right now, and if there are any small business owners in this room, and I speak with them all the time in our district, that's number one on most people's list. The greatest challenge they face is how to ensure that their employees have access to some kind of health care. And as a small business owner, nothing would be better when you only have about a dozen or 20 employees to have Medicare as an option. It's easy to understand, it's available, it's affordable, and best of all, as many of you in this room probably know, you can enhance it with a private plan if you wish. And that's how I think we can start migrating to a system that ensures that everybody has an option available to them. You know, Republicans often argue. We want competition and we want choices. I understand that. So let's expand Medicare for other people to buy into, which would actually help the Medicare system because people are buying into it. They're paying for their Medicare coverage. And by so doing, all we're doing is ensuring that people have more choices because there are too many people that I speak with all the time that simply don't have any good options available to them. And when they have options available to them, they can barely understand the differences between them. I think we can do better. I know we can do better. And that's my proposition. And if Medicare becomes more of a buy-in program for people who don't qualify because of age, it becomes a stronger system with more leverage to negotiate pharmaceutical pricing, which Eric Paulson has stood in the way of now for many, many years. And secondly, we need to change the care delivery model because our cost of care is too high. And the only way to reduce insurance premiums is to reduce the cost of care. And that's why my argument is we need an incentive structure, we need reimbursement that rewards prevention, not just procedures. And I'll give you a quick example. I met with the leaders of the Atlanta Health System recently. They talked about how they implemented a care team for cancer patients that prevented 95 people who were having cancer care from being readmitted to the hospital. It saved the community $1.2 million, but it cost the line $600,000 that they were not reimbursed for. So if you take that, extrapolate that around the country in every hospital and health system, those that want to do good, it costs them money. They're not reimbursed for it. So we need to change the model so that those who are actually preventing illness and taking care of people and preventing them from having to be readmitted are rewarded for it. And that's how we're going to make changes in this country. The problem is we don't have people in Congress that have served on the board of health systems and understand the dynamics of how this works. And that's something I can bring to the table and I intend to. Because we have a cost problem that has got to be addressed. And I know how to do it. It's going to be hard work, but I know how to do it. Right here, and then we're going to go right here. Yes.
So we are surrounded by Republicans. What is your message?
You talking about this table?
No. In our neighborhood, dear Ron, mostly Republicans. And what is your message that's going to win them over so you can actually grant this?
So the question is, what is my message to Republicans that will help us win in November? Well, my message to Republicans is the same as it is to Democrats, Independents, Libertarians, and that is I love y'all. That's one. I'm really sick of the labels in this country, and I really do want to bring people together. Not just and my dad used to say, you know, when two people always agree, you only need one of them. You know, I like debate, I like conversation, I like ideas. No party has a monopoly on ideas. You know, I'm fiscally responsible, I'm socially inclusive, and I'm independent-minded. That's what it seems most of the people I speak with are like too. The problem is that if you're a Democrat, many times you don't even think about the Republican option, and when you're a Republican, you don't even think about the Democratic option. One of the beautiful things about the 3rd District is that we have a history of ticket splitters. We're a purple district. People vote for Democrats and Republicans, and that's a good thing. I wish both parties could offer more candidates that appeal to more people and can be authentic and honest about their perspectives. So my message to Republicans is the same as it is to Democrats and to everybody else, which is these are my principles and values, this is what I'm hearing from people, and that's how representation begins. If more of us started looking at it that way, I think we'd all be better off. And that's why I asked you if you might be willing to advocate. You know, I was just at a house party a couple weeks ago in which, hosted by a Republican, with about 60 to 75 Republicans. And it was a standing ovation by the end of the night. And it was an epiphany to them, because they had never gone to a fundraiser for a Democrat before. So we have to open our eyes, we have to open our ears, we have to open our hearts, and ensure that candidates from both sides of the aisles have our principles and values in mind and our best interests in mind. And if we can start affecting a little bit of change in this next election and get us back together, I think this president actually afforded us that chance for the first time in a long time. And I'm seeing it, and I mean this very sincerely, I'm seeing it. Instead of people running further and further to the right and left, I'm seeing a lot more people come together. And that's the most exciting thing I can possibly share with you. And I think it's just the beginning of some significant change. And that's how we're going to do it.
I'm here because both my wife and I support 95% of what we've heard you say in the last 6 months. I will make an observation that the influence of Big Pharma money long predates the Republican control of Congress. Democrats have had an opportunity in the past when they held majorities to make fundamental changes in Medicare's ability to negotiate medical prices, etc. In the environment where both parties seem to be working to their respective streams, I think you are a guiding light for moderatism in the middle, but there are not many of you around. How do you plan to bring the extension of right and left to bipartisan, which is easy to say, damn tough to do?
Thanks for bringing that up. And those of you who watched or listened to the debate today heard me say that I'm disappointed in both parties. And I think that is absolutely my truth. I'm disappointed in both parties for the reason that you just brought to attention. There have been failings on both sides of the aisle for decades, for generations. And I want to try to address that. And I argue that we begin to do so by reforming our campaign finance system. The money in politics, in my estimation, affects both sides of the aisle. This is systematic, not one party worse than the other. It so happens that our current representative is number 6 out of 435. That's worse. But we have a systematic problem that has got to be addressed. And if I have anything to do with it, should I have the honor of serving you in Congress and have the honor of participating in the reformation of the Democratic Party, I will ensure that money in politics and campaign finance reform becomes a core part of the platform. Because that's why none of the changes that I think most of us want to see effected have the possibility of happening. And it's true on both sides of the aisle. That's my promise. I'm just at this point. It's not going to be from one party or the other. It's systematic. And we've got to address it. We need more people willing to do so. And that's my promise. Just watch, follow the money. Follow the money. You'll know what the problem is in the U.S. Congress on both sides.
Dean, I met you a year ago,
Yes, we did.
and I think I listened to you multiple times. You impress me every day. And just want to tell you, I wish more politicians like you. I think you are an honest, straight shooter. By the way, no, he's not paid. But just coming from my heart, I think you're an honest guy, straight shooter, you don't look like a politician, and I think we need more people like you in our government. So thank you for running, and I don't have any questions.
So I want to thank you for supporting the Problem Solvers Caucus today. And I hear a lot of residents around bipartisanship and this gentleman's suggestion about breaking the gridlock in Congress. If you're interested in that, there's an organization called NoLabels.org. Go to their website, register, and I will contact you if you're interested in doing more about that. My name is Steve Shuey, and I'm the local co-chair for the 3rd District for NoLabels.org. We're trying to reform the rules in Congress so this guy gets some help with this in Congress.
Here, here. Thank you. No Labels has been fighting this fight for some time now, and I think we're at the precipice of actually making some change. And I do encourage all of you to investigate it. No Labels is a wonderful, wonderful organization. Yes, yes, I know you've been working for a long time.
Thank you for being here. As long as we're encouraging bipartisan here, I would like to see something done on a national level concerning redistricting. Both parties have done despicable things with it, but quite frankly, the Republicans have taken it to a whole new level. So I don't know what could be done, but it would sure be nice if they could come up with a formula nationally that would come up with a sensible redistricting plan, including Democrats, Republicans, Independents, Green parties, whatever. And that would be three people right now. We get all this political.
I'll be back. A word that I don't think I've ever used before. The question, the contention and the question is about redistricting. And one of the great things about the 3rd District is that I think this is how a district should look like this thing. I think it's a great combination of, in fact, almost equal numbers of Republicans, Democrats, and Independents. And that's what I believe America is. And that's how it looks. And that's why this race in this district is going to be one of the most closely followed in the entire midterm election. Because we're one of the very last and very few truly purple swing districts. And I wish more looked like this. Because it's not healthy. We're going back to term limits and campaign finance reform, campaign reform. When you have someone who has a lock on a seat as long as they want it, that's not healthy for this country, plain and simple. I want to see change, and I want to see new ideas, and I want to see new candidates. And that, if a district is perpetually blue or perpetually red, that's not in the country's best interest. And we have a growing urban and rural divide in this country that really defines politics. So I'd like to see that shaken up, and I think it's systematic. I want to see both. I want to see a more thoughtful way to design and to do redistricting, so that it encourages thoughtful conversations, thoughtful debates, and frankly affords chances to both Republicans and Democrats to win. And to win, that means talking to people and meeting people in the streets and their neighborhoods and in their homes to understand what's important. And anything that provides more of an incentive to go beyond your base, if you will, is in the best interest of this country. And I agree. And we have to make changes so that people put America's interests ahead of special interests. There's no question. Yes? Yeah.
Hi, I'm Josh.
Hi, Josh.
Nice to meet you. I'm a lifelong learner, and I've accomplished it to prove it, so I'm going to proudly comment. Do you know what the #1 cause of death in America is?
Suicide?
No. It is heart disease. Do you know what the #1 contributor to climate change is?
Transportation, possibly.
That's what most people think. It is meat eating.
Sure.
It is carnism. It is the yes. Do you know how 99% of the animals are raised on farms? So what is your plan to combat climate change, combat these health crises that we have there, with regard to climate change with all that?
Well, I'll tell you that when you just, a couple of things you just mentioned, we're not, that's why I do this. It's to listen to people with perspectives that I haven't heard before, so I'm kind of grateful that you bring it up. So my proposition for climate change is first and foremost to believe science and understand that it's real and it's a real threat to our I don't believe that every member of the Republican Party is behind closed doors denies that climate change is real, but I'm afraid that because of special interests who finance their campaigns, they have to do so in the public face, and I think that's what's the great flaw in our system. My proposition is quite clear. I think we have to acknowledge the truth. I think we have to migrate from the subsidies that go into fossil fuel production and migrate those to renewable energies. What we do in this country at great effect, but it's not the only. We should not just be at the rejoining Paris climate accord. We should be leading in the international community and trying to affect some of the change.
And what specifically will you do about animal welfare and take these actions?
And in terms of animal welfare, I will tell you that it's something I'd like to learn more about. I don't have a policy that I can share with you right now. If you want to help us and share some ideas on what would be helpful, my email is dean@phillipsforcongress.org, and I will read it, and my team will, and I promise you, we will listen and we will implement, and I need to learn more. I know it's rare that someone running for office tells you that he or she doesn't know it all. But I'm proud of the fact that I've learned more in the last year and a half than I learned in 30 years before, and this is in no small part of why I do this, and I learn something every day. So thank you, and I mean that sincerely. I hope you find it. Yes, sir.
I think Davis was still concerned about the 500 some kids that are eating Christmas in our country. I mean, this is probably one of the lowest points in the country.
So the question is about kids being separated from their parents. When I saw the same reports that all of you did, I was appalled that that was our country. I don't think I've ever seen the United States of America in that light in my entire life. I think it's still painful to even contemplate that that was happening for so long. And should I become your member of Congress, nothing like that would ever happen again if I had anything to say about it. It's so inhumane, it is so counter American values, it is counter Republican values and Democratic values. But it's just another example of this administration's lack of concern for humanity, lack of concern for the principles and values that make this country so wonderful. And frankly, it's a dereliction of duty for the United States Congress that has a constitutional responsibility to provide a check and oversight on the executive branch. On November 6th, we need to flip 23 seats in the House to ensure that we have that check. It is integral. It is integral to a well-functioning democracy, a democratic republic such as ours, to ensure that there are people looking after their responsibilities. And that's why we need to do this, and that's my promise, is that we will. That we will. Yes, sir.
Hi,
Hi.
I am so impressed with you.
No, thank you.
Thank you very much for your thoughts tonight. Should we keep the electoral college, or should we change it? Let's just get your thoughts there.
I'm going to raise a band. The question is about the Electoral College. And I have great reverence for our Constitution, and I have great reverence for tradition and history. And I think there's always a slippery slope when we want to make changes because it's convenient. And I'm not saying that's the case in this case. But I think the Electoral College has served this country well for most of its history. I understand why in recent years it has not served Democrats well. But I think there are some underlying issues that we can address that can affect some of the changes, I think, that make for a more balanced playing field and a level playing field. There was a question today in the debate about impeachment. And I feel the same way. I think we have to really recognize the consequences of changing time-proven systems in this country. My promise to you is that I will always listen to both sides presented on any issue. I will do as much homework as humanly possible to contemplate consequences, to understand what's broken and how we can fix it. I do not have a distinct prescription for the Electoral College, other than that is a national conversation that I think we should have, but also be very mindful of changing a system that has served this country very, very, very well, I think, for a long, long time, including states that are small states that I think should be part of the national conversation and should have a say in the outcomes of our election. My concern is if we had just simply a national election without the Electoral College, that candidates would only show up in the biggest population centers in this entire country, maybe states like Delaware or Montana, or perhaps even Minnesota, rarely visited. The way the system works, I think, is something that I revere and I think we should be very mindful of. And That may or may not become part of the national conversation, but rest assured, it's something I'm mindful of, and right now I've been doing a lot of reading on it, because I think we need a system that ensures that everybody who votes, their vote counts, and that the national will is registered in the outcomes of elections. And if that's not the case, we have some reformation to consider. Yes, in the very back. In the Gophers Act.
I came in late, so I apologize. Where do you stand on firearms and civil gun rights? Corporate welfare, you touched on the stadium and Amazon, but both of them held up in the county, Shakopee, and tax subsidies for their projects. And then drugs. It's my understanding pharmacists are prohibited by law, telling the customer they just pay for their drugs cheaper than getting a health plan, and inflated prices. And we export drugs to Canada. Canada turns around, makes profit, sends them back to the United States, and still buy it cheaper than what we can in our own countries.
Okay, well, so let me try to remember each question in its order. The first one was about gun violence prevention. I have a 5-point plan, beginning with how to reduce gun violence in this country. It starts with universal background checks. Almost 90%, if not more, of this country agrees that universal background checks are an acceptable beginning. The Democrats and Republicans, and I absolutely endorse that and support it. The fact that that hasn't happened in 20 years since Columbine, or 19 years since Columbine, is just dumbfounding. I do believe that we should have a ban on weapons that can cause mass human carnage in a matter of moments in this country. That is not to say, I do not want to take guns away from people, but I don't think in a country that you can't have a hand grenade in your pocket, you can't have a bazooka, you can't have an automatic weapon. I don't think it's in this country's best interest to have weapons that can cause mass human carnage in a matter of moments. And I think we should look at that. I also believe it's time that we recognize that every single school in this country needs mental health professionals in the schools. Start taking because we do not have parity. Mental health and physical health parity has not happened yet, despite the fact that Jim Ramstad and Paul Wellstone work together on accomplishing that. We need those professionals in every single school to take care of our kids at young ages, destigmatize mental health issues, and ensure that people and kids in particular are growing up in environments in which they're taken care of. I think we need anti-bullying programs in every single school to ensure that kids are respectful to one another. And I think that's the beginning. I think we also need the Centers for Disease Control to start doing their job. You know, Congress has still not mandated that the CDC study this national health crisis and make thoughtful proposals about how it can address it. And I say that recognizing that in the 1960s and 70s, we had highway fatalities that were exploding. And the CDC studied it as we do national health crisis in this country. We didn't ban cars. We made them safer. We changed the design of highways and lighting and barriers and safety features in cars. I think we should look at this problem the exact same way. Let's set aside the ideologies. The Second Amendment exists and it should exist, and I understand it and support it. But let's be real. Let's listen, and let's try to find a source of solutions rather than screaming at each other. And that's why I say gun violence prevention. The question is not gun control. The question is how do we reduce gun violence in this country? And I will say last but not least, my 5th point of the plan is to address the money in politics. Because the gun lobby in this country has hijacked the conversation. All I'm asking for is a conversation about something that every single person with whom I've spoken with in the 3rd District in a year and a half agrees on, and that is we need to do something to reduce the incidence of gun violence, particularly in schools. And that's why I'm fighting so hard to try to win this seat in Congress and bring a voice of decency and reason and collaboration to a place that needs it. I talked about pharmaceutical pricing earlier. We subsidize the entire world, and I think that's wrong. You shouldn't be able to go to Canada and buy a pharmaceutical or a prescription drug for a third or half or even less than you do in this country. But there's a reason for it. I described it as because the pharma industry spends hundreds of millions of dollars a year to ensure that there's no change in the system. And as long as we have good part of Congress taking that money and doing the bidding of those pharmaceutical companies, we will continue to pay the world's highest prices, and every other country in the world paying the lower. And by the way, all they have to do is lower our prices and slightly raise prices around the world, and they will do just as well, if not better. This is not about ruining the pharma industry or reducing incentives for innovation. I've been a business person my entire adult life. There's a better way to do this. Money in politics is very preventative for everything, and I really want to affect that change. So I think everybody, I want to say thank you. I want to say thank you for, yes, Ms. Young.
This guy's been waiting.
Okay, oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Okay, so this, recently there's been this ideology often espoused by the executive branch, and I think it's epitomized by Rudy Giuliani's recent quotes: "Truth isn't true," and you can invent your own truth nowadays.
Yeah.
Where it's increasing willingness to accept more and more outlandish and ridiculous conspiracy theories, CQ, if we want to get into the craziness of, starting with economics, rather than accept perhaps the validity of the viewpoint that is contrary to their own, or accept evidence that contradicts what they wish to be true. And I believe the question is, with the increasing of the propagation of this idea, and both by support in the executive branch and all of the supporters that fuel the executive branch's willingness to propagate these ideas, how do we then engage those people if they are unwilling to accept opposing viewpoints?
So that's I'm trying to paraphrase your question, but the question is how do we bring people to the table to have conversations about some of these outlandish propositions that are floating around? We live in a day and age in which there are blessings and curses to every technological advance. Social media, the internet, on one hand, was a great step forward because it allowed millions, hundreds of millions, if not billions of people around the world to access facts and information that they never would have before. It also has allowed people to propagate falsehoods and conspiracy theories that are awfully damaging, particularly when you have a president of the United States that is the commander of tweets. And I'm concerned about the fact that when I was growing up as a kid, I would watch Walter Cronkite and Dave Moore tell us what happened that day. And it didn't matter if you were a Republican or Democrat, independent, libertarian, anything else. You took that truth, and then you had a debate about it. But now we self-select. Republicans tend to watch Fox News, Democrats tend to watch MSNBC, and truth looks a little bit different. And that's concerning, because if we can't agree on facts, or science, or truth, it's hard to have a thoughtful debate. We also live in a country that has thoughtful freedoms guaranteed by the Constitution. And that means that we can't legislate doing it a whole lot differently. Which means we have to encourage our friends and neighbors to be thoughtful, compassionate, open-minded. And that's the core mission. I'm glad you asked this question to wrap this up, because that's the core mission of this campaign. You'll know that our slogan, everyone's invited. I want to listen to people. I don't care if you are here to challenge me. I don't care if you're here to demean me. I don't care if you disagree with me. I want to hear your perspective. Everybody in this room, and everybody in this district, and everybody in this state and country has a different life experience. That means our perspectives are different. And I respect everybody. So we all have a role to play here. We can't legislate coming together. We can't legislate love or compassion or decency or listening. But all of us can play a little bit of a role, I think, every single day to encourage more of it. And I think by so doing, your generation might be the beneficiaries and frankly might be the ones that we need to rely on to get it done. So that's my hope for your generation. Are you a voter yet?
Yes.
Great. First,
no, I voted in 2016.
Awesome. So that's and truth, I'm one voice running for one seat in a body of 435. What we can do collectively is a whole lot more powerful, if you ask me, and it can begin as early as tonight. And to that end, if you all want to help this campaign, by sharing some information on social media, inviting others to come to an event like this to ask questions and participate in conversation, I would be really honored, and I'd be very grateful, because I want to leave a legacy for my daughters, for your children and your grandchildren, and your families and friends. And if we do this together, I think we can reflect back on a day like this and on November 6th, and know that we did something that past generations haven't done for this country, which is change its course because of decency and compassion, and most of all, participation. So thank you for participating. Thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing your ideas. I'm going to wrap this up by saying I don't care if you're a Republican, a Democrat, an independent, anything in between. I respect you. I love you. I'd love to have you on board, and I hope to leave more hopeful and optimistic, because change is coming, everybody. So